All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and that is a tough way to lose. I'm going to go ahead and get it out the way. Taylor Heinicke, this offensive line, and the referees are the reason we lose this game. The offense, period. When the defense only allows a team to score 13 points, I don't care what you say about what the defense looked like at times in the game. When a defense only allows the opponent to score 13 points on offense, because remember there was a strip sack for a touchdown by our offense that gave them seven of their points. When the defense only allows 13 points, you can't blame the defense. When your offense is scoring 12 points in an NFL game in 2022, when the rules are literally set up for the offense to beat the defense regardless, it's just inexcusable in the offense. So y'all know me, man. I'm quick to blame the refs when it's their fault, and it was definitely their fault. And when you go back and look at even the Terry McLaurin play, because the Curtis Samuel play was obviously pass interference. Even Chris Sims, after the game was over, was like, that's obvious. Like, there's not even like a question as to whether or not that was pass interference. We should have got a fresh set of downs and everything. And then the fact that they called that pass interference, they didn't call that pass interference, but called the pick on Jahan Dotson. There were a few calls in that game that the refs were terrible. But I feel like at the end of the day, even with as bad as the refs were, we didn't deserve to win that game. At least the offense didn't. The defense did, but the offense didn't play well enough to win that game. Honestly, I feel like if the refs gave us a neutral game, even with as bad as our offense was, we would have won the game, or at the very least went into overtime. But I think we would have won the game. Even if our offense played that terrible and the refs weren't terrible, we win that game. Or if our offense, or if the refs are terrible but our offense isn't that terrible, we win the game. But the fact that both happened, I just feel like we also didn't deserve to win that game. But the refs, obviously, that looked like Vegas called that game. But going back to my original point, the Curtis Samuel call was terrible. The Jahan Dotson pick on the two-point conversion was terrible. But the Terry McLaurin play, if you go look back at it, and I retweeted it on Twitter right before I started recording, receivers check with the refs sometimes to make sure they're good. Like Terry McLaurin, you see him in the video, literally look at the ref twice. Like, am I good? Like, as far as the illegal formation, like not being close up on the line of scrimmage enough, he literally looked at the ref twice, like, I'm good. And then he went back and was like, let me make sure, am I good? Ref didn't tell him nothing, didn't say yes, nothing, just sat there and was like, just waiting, like, oh yeah, as soon as they hike the ball, I'm calling his flag. But he's technically supposed to tell Terry McLaurin if that's what he's doing is legal and everything, so if it's within the rules. So the refs, man, terrible. Refs terrible, but at the same time, offense terrible. Taylor Heinicke for pretty much the majority of the game. We're gonna, again, y'all know my game reviews, we talk about every position, we talk about every player that contributed in the game. So we're gonna get to Taylor Heinicke, we're gonna get to Scott Turner, we're gonna get to Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, we're gonna get to special teams, Joey Sly, Tressway, all of that. But we got to go position group by position group, starting with the quarterback and offense, then we go wide receiver, running back, offensive line, tight end, all of that. Y'all know how this goes. So we're gonna call out everybody for this game, including even some of the defensive players, because like, where was Deron Payne? But one glass half full look at this is the fact that even after this loss, we're still the 7th seed, I believe. From what I'm seeing on NFL.com right now with their standings and their playoff picture, we are still technically the 7th seed, because the Seahawks are 7-7, the Lions are 7-7. We're 7-6-1. So we are still technically the 7th seed. If the playoffs were to start today, we would be in the playoffs. But the sad part about that is that we'd be playing the Vikings. But then again, I'm down to play the Vikings. We should have beat them last time. That's cool. I would prefer to play the Vikings than the 49ers, which takes me to my next point. I mean, granted, we are the 7th seed, and that's the glass half full part of it, but you could argue the Giants were probably our easiest opponent, well, the least difficult opponent out of our last 4 games. After this Giants loss, we got to play the 49ers, who looks like the hottest team in the NFL right now, them and the Eagles. You got to play the Browns, run game crazy, literally basically just designed like the Giants, a decent defense with talent. Kayvon Thibodeau showed out today. Oh my God, we got to talk about that when we get later into the game. I almost forgot about that. Azeez Ojulari had the game of his life last time we played the Giants, and then Kayvon Thibodeau has the best game he's had probably since he was born, including high school and college. But yeah, man, we got to play the Browns, who has a crazy run game. Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, my Georgia Bulldog, Nick Chubb. Who knows if Deshaun Watson by then figures it out? He's been terrible so far, but who's to say that Deshaun Watson doesn't turn into the Texans' Deshaun Watson by the time we play them in 2 weeks? And then you got to play the Cowboys, who have been folding, almost lost to the Texans, did lose to the Jaguars, but who knows how they look by the time we play them the last week of the last game of the season. So I'm worried. You know I'm Mr. Optimistic, but even though we are the 7th seed, and that is a glass half full way to look at it, we are the 7th seed, but the rest of our schedule is brutal. And then the Seahawks, even though they've been kind of failing lately, they play the 49ers. Who do the Seahawks play next? But I believe their schedule is easier than ours. 49ers, Browns, Cowboys, and the Lions are hot right now. Even though they barely beat the Jets, who are better than what people expected, the way they beat them was a little ugly, but they are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now as well. And they have the tiebreaker between us and them. Remember, the Lions beat us in week 2. So it's ugly right now. The playoffs are not dead because, again, technically, if the playoffs were to start today, we make the playoffs. But at the same time, it's not looking great at all right now. I'm not going to lie to you. But again, just to recap before we dive into this film review, to dive into this review of this game, and we're going to go position group by position group, I blame, it just depends, offensive line for every quarter but the fourth, kind of. Even at times in the fourth quarter, they weren't good. But at the same time, they're great at run blocking, but they're terrible at pass blocking. They were terrible at pass blocking for like 3.5 quarters, three and almost some of the fourth quarter, basically. Then you have Taylor Heinicke, who was pretty much bad all day except for maybe like 2 throws. Do not give him credit. I mean, I'm glad that he threw that deep bomb to Jahan Dotson, but that was underthrown. Jahan Dotson had to make a miracle catch to get it. Curtis Samuel, that should have been a touchdown. We should be tied up and still playing in overtime right now. It's 11:50 right now. I guess y'all will see this later, so it won't technically be right now for y'all when y'all are watching this, but Curtis Samuel has an easy touchdown if Taylor Heinicke doesn't underthrow him right there. And a lot of y'all keep acting like, I keep saying Taylor Heinicke, we're winning in spite of him a lot of these games. It's not Taylor Heinicke. I've been saying if the defense doesn't play at an elite level, if our run game isn't potent, like 150 yards a game potent, and if Scott Turner isn't a genius, and if the offensive line doesn't block their tail off, is Taylor Heinicke good enough to make up for any of those deficiencies? The only reason we've been winning a lot of our games, especially the Eagles game, was because our defense was playing at an elite level, and we ran the ball like nobody's business, and were able to control time of possession and all of that. But if the refs hate like they did today, if the defense is elite outside of one particular drive, if the offensive line can't pass protect as well as you hope they can, is Taylor Heinicke good enough to make up that difference? I've been saying that for the past 6 weeks, and I tried to warn y'all about the heartbreak about Taylor Heinicke. I've been trying to warn y'all about the potential Heinicke heartbreak. I've been trying to give y'all the heads up. A lot of y'all didn't want to listen. I warned y'all. I kept telling y'all we were winning in spite of Heinicke. So it is what it is, but again, it's not all Heinicke's fault, though. Let me make that clear. It's not all Heinicke's fault. Scott Turner had some bad play calls throughout the game as well, even though I feel like it was more Taylor Heinicke than Scott Turner easily. I don't even think it's close, but Scott Turner deserves a lot of blame. Again, the offensive line's pass protection deserves a lot of blame as well. You can argue even more blame than Taylor Heinicke, and then also the refs. So those are my top 3/4, because you can kind of throw Scott Turner in there as the 4th. But it's Taylor Heinicke, offensive line, pass protection wise, and the refs are the reason we lost this game, straight up and down, period. But yeah, man, before we dive into everything, I already did like a nice little summary, but before we dive into everything, position group by position group and all of that type of stuff, we're going to go player by player. We're going to talk about Dyami Brown and everybody that contributed in this game. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you pull up every live stream. Again, we're still technically in the playoff hunt. Again, we are still technically in the playoffs if the playoffs were to start today. So make sure you pull up every weekend for the live streams. I do my live play-by-play analysis every Commanders game, and I'm gonna keep speaking it into existence the postseason as well. Now, of course, after a loss like that, y'all know I'm a big draft guy. I love free agency and all of that. I'm a big team builder guy. I'm more passionate about the offseason than actual games, I'm not gonna lie. So now I'm about to really start working on content, because even after the Falcons win, the way that we barely won, I was like, oh yeah, it's time to start doing draft stuff. So I started watching film on players and things like that. Y'all saw I came out with my mock draft this past week, and now I'm about to continue to do the same thing moving forward. About to start getting y'all some draft content, some free agency content, some team building content. Definitely it's about to start coming out more often, especially after an L like that. So make sure y'all stay tuned for the live streams, the videos, all of that. And without further ado, let's get it. Man, man. I mean, I don't even know where to start for real. I mean, of course, we're going to start with the offense. I may start with Scott Turner before we get to the quarterbacks. Well, Taylor Heinicke was the only quarterback that played for us. But I also want to take a look at some stats, man, before we dive into everything, just in case, because I want to make sure I get this out the way before we dive into too many other things and I may forget or something like that. But the Giants were 2 of 10 on third down. That's great for the defense. They just had that one really bad 4th and 9 that they allowed, which led to an eventual touchdown. That was the only 4th down that the Giants attempted, and they got it, of course. So between 3rd and 4th down, they were 3 of 11 between both combined. That's really good for a defense, like really good. And even so, like the Giants had 288 total yards to our 387. And time of possession was almost the same. They had one more minute than us, but they had 30 and 30. We had 29-30. But after the defense only allowed the Giants to go 3 of 11 on 3rd and 4th downs combined, guess what our offense did? Just guess. Like, I just want to give y'all a little quiz right now. Just take the time without looking at the stats. I'm going to give you the answer, but just take a quick second to have an answer in your head before I tell you. And I bet you the answer is worse than what you think. We went 1 of 10 on 3rd down today on offense. 1 of 10. 1 of 2 on 4th down. So combined, we went 2 of 12 on 3rd and 4th down today. So our defense found a way to go 3 of 11 on 3rd and 4th down combined. Our offense found a way to go worse than that. 2 of 12. I mean, I don't know what to say beyond that. I mean, we're gonna dive into everything individually and break down why that happened. But overall, that's ridiculous, man. Come on now. And then even just like Taylor Heinicke, 17 of 29 for 249 yards, 1 touchdown. If you're only looking at the stats, you would think he outplayed Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones went 21 of 32, 160 yards and 35 rushing yards, no touchdown, no interceptions. If you're looking at stats, you would think Taylor Heinicke played better than Daniel Jones. He did not. I promise you that. Don't just be a box score watcher, man. That if you really look at the game, Daniel Jones outplayed him. He had zip on passes that Taylor Heinicke couldn't. I mean, we got to admit that really long drive where the Giants scored the touchdown, that same drive is the 4th and 9 that we allowed to be converted. There was only one play where a receiver was like literally open. The rest of them was good coverage by the secondary, defensive backs, corners, whatever. And Daniel Jones was fitting it in the tight windows because he has the arm strength to zip throws where Taylor Heinicke doesn't. He throws paper airplanes, so by the time it gets there, the defense is able to react and bat the ball down. Even like that Curtis Samuel throw at the end, even with the pass interference, maybe he catches it and Taylor Heinicke could throw it sooner. But even disregarding that, the Curtis Samuel throw earlier in the game, I believe it was in like the 2nd quarter or something, it should have been there. It should have, if it was there sooner, whether Taylor Heinicke throws it sooner or he has more zip on it, Curtis Samuel catches it because he was open when Taylor Heinicke released the ball, but by the time it got there, the safety was able to come up and bat the ball down. That was like in the 2nd quarter. That's not even the game losing play at the end I'm talking about. And then Daniel Jones right afterwards, the immediate drive afterwards is the drive that I'm talking about, the 97-yard touchdown drive from their own 3-yard line. And that's just a domino effect. Taylor Heinicke doesn't have the arm strength to get the ball to Curtis Samuel. We punt the ball and the Giants get the ball, and then it leads to a 97-yard touchdown drive. So even though I still blame the defense, obviously, for allowing a 97-yard touchdown drive, but the fact that Taylor Heinicke didn't have the arm strength to get it to Curtis Samuel to get that first down, maybe we score 3 points, maybe we score a touchdown, who knows what happens after that. Domino effect. It's just like everything eventually comes back to Taylor Heinicke. It's so sad. But yeah, I just wanted to point out the fact that Daniel Jones threw for 160 yards, no touchdowns, and had a better day than Taylor Heinicke. He threw for 249 yards and a touchdown. Now that one drive where Taylor Heinicke and Scott Turner were cooking, where we were just throwing the ball, Terry, end around with De'Ami Brown, all of that type of stuff, that was his best drive by far. And then near the end of the game, that final drive before we lost the game there, that throw to Jahan Dotson towards the sideline to get us to like the 10-yard line, that was arguably his best throw of the day. But outside of that, Taylor Heinicke was not good. And just running the ball wise, they had 128 rushing yards, we had 159. They had 160 passing yards, we had 228. If you look at every stat but 3rd down efficiency, and even then, they went 2 of 10, we went 1 of 10. That's not that much better. If you pretty much look at every stat, you would think we won the game. But referees, first of all, penalties as well. We had one more penalty than them for 10 more yards, so it's not even like that was a big difference. But I mean, it was just a bunch of little things. It was the fact that Daniel Jones could hit receivers in tight windows. Taylor Heinicke couldn't. It was the fact the refs didn't like us. It was the fact that we couldn't pass protect for Taylor Heinicke and allowed a strip sack for a touchdown, which if that doesn't happen, we're down 12-13. We just kick a field goal right there and win the game at the end. I mean, it's just so many little things that went wrong. The offensive line is a huge blame. Taylor Heinicke is a huge blame, and the refs are a huge blame. And you can also blame Scott Turner at times, even though overall I felt like he called a fairly good game. He was a genius at times. He was an idiot at times. And overall, you can kind of grade it like a B-, I guess, maybe a C+. But he wasn't as bad as the offensive line, Taylor Heinicke, or the refs at all. He wasn't great, but I mean, like I said, I feel like we can obviously get an upgrade over Scott Turner. But upgrading the quarterback position is definitely more of a priority, for sure. No matter who you draft, Anthony Richardson, trade up for like a CJ Stroud, whatever. All I know, or you go with Sam Howell. Either way, I feel like I would prefer a new quarterback in Scott Turner over a new offensive coordinator in Taylor Heinicke next year, point blank period. I feel like everybody should. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you at this point after you just saw a game like that, after you go watch the Colts game until the last 5 minutes, after you go watch the Vikings game. I mean, come on now. But I guess since we're already talking about Taylor Heinicke, we can already talk about it. I mean, there's really not much else to be said. I feel like Scott Turner, one thing I definitely blame him for is keeping the training wheels on Taylor Heinicke too much. We need to open up the offense like we did that final drive and then that other drive where we just easily went down and threw a touchdown. Like it was just nothing. Terry, De'Ami Brown. Again, Taylor Heinicke didn't even make necessarily any really crazy impressive throws on that drive, but we opened up the offense and gave Taylor Heinicke the keys, and I feel like I'm not a big fan of Taylor Heinicke. Of course, I'm not a big fan of Taylor Heinicke. From Atlanta, I want him to be great, but at this point, you already know what he is. I'm rooting for him. I want him. If there were any quarterback on our roster who I would want to be a Hall of Famer, it's Taylor Heinicke because he's from Atlanta, but he very obviously isn't. He is a backup quarterback, point blank period. He's a high-tier backup quarterback, but that's it. And it's just like at the end of the day, you need to open up the offense for him. If he can't handle it, he's not your quarterback. But stop babying him. Let him use his legs like we did today. He should have been doing that all season. Let him sling it around. We should have been like he did a couple of drives this game. Granted, he's gonna overthrow receivers every now and then, or he's gonna underthrow them like he did Jahan Dotson with the deep bomb and Curtis Samuel with the sideline throw that should have been a touchdown, and we should have been going for 2 to tie the game and to go into overtime. That's all Taylor Heinicke right there, point blank period. Offensive line was bad the majority of the day, but those throws were just purely on Taylor Heinicke and nobody else. Shouts out to Jahan Dotson for mossing his receiver. Shouts out to Curtis Samuel for having to do a toe tap on the sideline while he's open by at least 10 yards to the next defender. That's ridiculous. Taylor Heinicke, you just gotta play better. Because, I mean, of course, going to Carson Wentz doesn't necessarily sound like a great idea either because how bad the offensive line has been. If Taylor Heinicke got sacked 3 times, Carson Wentz today probably gets sacked 6 or 7. I'm not going to lie. But Carson Wentz does give you a little bit high variance, and he probably hits Curtis Samuel stride for stride for that touchdown to tie the game right there. Maybe it's like certain situations you have Taylor Heinicke in the game, certain situations you bring in Carson Wentz. Of course, that's obviously a terrible idea, but that's just what it seems like. They both, the Carson Wentz strengths are Taylor Heinicke's weaknesses. Taylor Heinicke's weaknesses are Carson Wentz strengths. It's so annoying. It's so annoying to go back and forth and see this. And then, so basically, I'm just trying to prove the point that, of course, we don't necessarily have an answer on roster right now, per se, a guaranteed answer. I've been screaming throw Sam Howell out there since Carson Wentz first got hurt, because then by now, Sam Howell would be a better quarterback. Now you throw him out there, he's still a rookie starting his first NFL game, and that's not looking too good for a playoff push. So you can't go to anybody but Taylor Heinicke unless Taylor Heinicke gets hurt, which you also, of course, hope doesn't happen. And again, he's from Atlanta, so I don't want to see him get hurt. But he's not it. Point blank period. It's plain and simple. Straight up, he's not it. I mean, I love how balanced our offense is. 10 passing first downs, 9 rushing first downs. That's how it should be. And we got 1 first down from a penalty, which was quite nice. But overall, man, this offense didn't deserve to win. I mean, I already talked about Scott Turner. There's not much else to say. I mean, he has some genius play calls. He has some terrible play calls at times. And overall, if you had to grade him, I would say probably a C+. Not great, but not terrible. If I had to grade Taylor Heinicke, the offensive line, and the referees, I would definitely give them a grade lower than C+. But again, I'm not defending Scott Turner because it's not like he had a great game either. But there were a lot of situations where if Taylor Heinicke makes the right throw, if he makes the right read, if he's more accurate, you think Scott Turner's more of a genius than he actually was, because there were times the receivers were open and Taylor Heinicke either didn't see him or overthrew him. And so you kind of base your opinion on Scott Turner based on how poorly Taylor Heinicke's throwing the ball, and I just don't understand why people can't separate the two. Either way, though, again, he wasn't that great. And then just moving on, offensive line, I feel like I've already said what needs to be said. I mean, Cornelius Lucas was getting beat out there. Everybody was getting beat in pass protection. Wes Schweitzer at center. Granted, better than what we would have gotten from Nick Martin, but he wasn't great either. Charles Leno, another strip sack, this time for a touchdown. That's the second I can vividly remember. He already had one a few games ago. There was a strip sack that led to a touchdown, but it wasn't literally a touchdown in that play. We allowed Kayvon Thibodeau to probably have his best game of his career. I mean, granted, he's a really talented player, and I expect him to be good moving forward as well. But it seemed like every time we ran the ball with Curtis Samuel, it was Kayvon Thibodeau as to why it didn't work. Every time it was a negative run result, it was him. One time, he completely just manhandled Logan Thomas into Curtis Samuel, and then I'm not even sure if he made the tackle, but he was the reason that the play resulted in negative yards. And other than that, every time Curtis Samuel touched the ball out of the backfield, it was Kayvon Thibodeau that actually got him, and he was getting pressure. None of our offensive linemen could block him on the edge. It was ugly, man. It was really bad. Our offensive line, again, was terrible for the majority of the game. But in the fourth quarter, not the entire fourth quarter, but a lot of it, they finally started to pass protect a little bit better. Not great, but better. Nowhere near as bad as the rest of the game. And Taylor Heinicke just wasn't ready. So I still, again, blame the offensive line a lot for this. And you can make a debate that it's the offensive line's fault more than Taylor Heinicke's. But still, Taylor Heinicke, offensive line, and the refs, whatever order you want to put them in, are the three biggest reasons why we lost this game. Point blank, period. Nothing else. Scott Turner is a distant fourth. And then moving on to the tight ends, Logan Thomas just doesn't look good out there. Now, granted, that drop pass he had, you got to catch that. I think it's 50-50. I think Taylor Heinicke should have thrown it better to where it should have hit him in the chest. Obviously, it was only like a 5-yard throw. It was really like a 3-yard throw vertically, but if you include like horizontally, it had to go. Maybe you could say it was like a 7-yard throw. That's not a difficult throw to make with Logan Thomas, who's not even that fast, running in stride. He overthrew him a little bit. And granted, Logan Thomas is still supposed to catch that. It touches your hands, you got to catch it. And then as far as blocking, penalties, Logan Thomas, I wouldn't say this year has been terrible, but it's definitely been disappointing. He's had a couple of good games, especially I believe it was the Texas game where he finally had his breakout game of the season. He's been disappointing this season, and he was also disappointing today, but I wouldn't say this season has been a complete failure for Logan Thomas, but he has not been really good, man. But also, Terry McLaurin overthrowing him like 5 times when he was open against the Vikings is the reason Logan Thomas hasn't been able to have good games. So again, at the end of the day, it all goes back to Taylor Heinicke somewhat. And again, the drop that he had, he probably doesn't drop it if Taylor Heinicke actually throws the ball accurately. So again, I'm not alleviating any blame from Logan Thomas. Again, this has been a disappointing year. But there's also other reasons why he's been struggling. But as far as blocking, that's completely on him and nobody else. He has been bad at blocking this year. Seemed like he's regressed a little bit. Cole Turner looks like a better blocker than him. Curtis Samuel even had a better block. Oh, and we're going to talk about it when we get to Jahan Dotson. Hopefully, I just want to go ahead and talk about it now before I forget. But Jahan Dotson, maybe Taylor Heinicke gets that touchdown right there. Of course, guess who? Kayvon Thibodeau made the play. And then we end up losing the game a couple of plays later with the Curtis Samuel pass interference that wasn't called right after the Terry McLaurin illegal formation that the refs hated on him for. I mean, he literally asked twice, and the refs just sat there and stared at him like, gave him the little, I already called the cops face type of thing. You know, so, but before that, Jahan Dotson, granted it is Kayvon Thibodeau, but if at least you try, you just at least try to block him, just run head first into his chest, maybe Taylor Heinicke dives in for the touchdown, and we're not even having any of these discussions. So, Jahan Dotson, that's on you. You had a great game overall, but that's on you. Which takes me to the receivers. Jahan Dotson, great game, led our team in reception yards, and he was the only one with the touchdown. He had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Huge day. Again, that deep bomb for 61 yards, underthrown by Taylor Heinicke. And Jahan Dotson, you also got to take away some credit. He wasn't able to separate. He was not open. Shouts out to, I'm assuming that was Scott Turner's call. Like, no matter what's going on, if we get this look, Taylor Heinicke, throw it up to Jahan Dotson. Because I refuse to believe that Taylor Heinicke read that play and threw that. Because if that was off of a Taylor Heinicke read, that's a bad read. Jahan Dotson was not open, which takes me back to the point that Jahan Dotson was not open. And so you got to take away some credit there for that. You should have had that guy beat, plain and simple. But at the same time, the fact that he came back and made that crazy catch, amazing. Worth every pick. I mean, we got to acknowledge the fact that Brian Robinson and Jahan Dotson were home run picks. Completely home run picks this draft. I feel like a lot of other guys have talent and potential, and Fadarian Mathis looked like he was going to be a beast before he got hurt in the first drive of the first game of the season, which is crazy. But Jahan Dotson and Brian Robinson are obviously home run picks for this team. And, I mean, I got to admit where I'm wrong. I thought Brian Robinson may have been somewhat of a reach or in third round. I feel like Jahan Dotson was somewhat of a reach where we got him. But they were home run picks, and they're going to last in this league forever. They're going to be important pieces for this team and playmakers for this team for a long time to come. But Terry McLaurin, 6 targets, 6 receptions, caught everything thrown to him. What does that say? Get him the ball more, Scott Turner. That's on you. But Terry McLaurin, 70 yards receiving. He officially passed 1,000 yards receiving this season, so congratulations to him. That's big time. Curtis Samuel, 5 targets, 3 receptions for 44 yards, including that 27-yarder along the sideline. It should have been a touchdown. He should have like 70 yards receiving because that should have been like a 40, 50-yard play for a touchdown. Brian Robinson also had that 1 reception for 18 yards along with 89 yards rushing. We're going to get to him when we get to the running backs, but I liked what I saw from De'Ami Brown out of the backfield. I like the fact that I see De'Ami Brown on the field a lot even when he's not getting the ball. Even on running plays, we substitute Jahan Dotson for him so he can come in and block. So right now, De'Ami Brown is making it known that I think him, Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel are our best run blocking wide receivers. I love Jahan Dotson, and he had the best receiving day out of all of our guys, but you saw in that play where Taylor Heinicke should have been able to dive for a touchdown that he's not a blocker, and that's why De'Ami Brown comes in on run plays. De'Ami Brown with only 1 target, 1 catch, 15 yards. No, not even. Actually, he was targeted twice and had no catches. He had 1 run for 15 yards on that end around. That's it. You'll probably be surprised to know how many snaps he played. I don't know how many it was, but I'm pretty sure it was something double digits, and you didn't really realize it because they bring him in on run plays because he's a better run blocker than Jahan Dotson. I'm not trying to bring down Jahan Dotson. I'm just trying to point out how De'Ami Brown matters on this team, and I would love for us to get a really good deep ball throwing quarterback that can get the ball to De'Ami Brown deep down the field like how Carson Wentz did that one game. And then that's really it as far as the receivers, man. We have the receivers. We have the skill position players, especially when everybody's healthy as far as the tight end group goes and the running back group, to be an elite offense. It's just Scott Turner at times. It's the quarterback most of the time. And it's the offensive line probably all of the time as well as to why our offense isn't more explosive and should be one of the best offense. If you're looking at our skill position players, our receivers, our tight ends, and running backs, our offense should be one of the greats in the NFL, but it isn't because everything else is stopping us and holding us back. Running back wise, Brian Robinson had a crazy game today. Only 12 carries, 89 yards. That's that efficiency I've been looking for. He's been getting 100-yard games, but it's been inefficient. And it's, you can blame the offensive line for a lot of it because his yards after contact is crazy as far as percentage-wise. Most running backs, the yards that they get before contact is a higher percentage than the yards that they get after contact. Brian Robinson is the complete opposite. So the offensive line has been blocking better, run blocking wise, but they haven't been great per se. They've been better, but not great. They've been certainly better than how they pass protect. But today, holes were opening up. And kind of like the past couple of games, holes have been opening up a little bit more. And Brian Robinson, a couple of plays. I remember one play vividly. It should have been a 5-yard loss. The Giants read it perfectly, and he somehow made enough guys miss to turn it into like a 5-yard gain. Goal line situation, 3rd and 1. That should have been touchdown before the phantom Terry McLaurin call. Technically, he was offsides. Technically, it was an illegal formation. He wasn't far enough up on the line of scrimmage, of course. But especially with Terry McLaurin being the guy that does everything right on and off the field, I feel like he deserves the benefit of the doubt. And the fact that he checked with the ref and the ref just gave him the already called the cops face and just left him out there to drown, literally waiting like, as soon as they snap this ball, I'm going to throw this flag. I'm going to set them up for failure. It's just terrible. But Brian Robinson on that goal line to be able to push his way through and get that touchdown, should have been a touchdown, at least game potentially tying touchdown. He's balling. Antonio Gibson, liked what I saw from him a little bit. Passing game, had 2 catches for 6 yards. Running game, 5 rushes for 21 yards, which is not bad, really. But him in the punt return, the kick return game is huge, man. Even before that final drive to set us up at the 40-something yard line, who knows what happens if Antonio Gibson doesn't have that return to give us the first of all, the yardage in the field position that we started with was great as well. But I feel like he also energized galvanize the offense and the team to make us believe, oh, we can do this. We can beat the Giants right now. So shout out to Antonio Gibson for that. I'll probably talk about it a little bit again when we get to the special teams part of the video. But shout out to him for that. And then, yeah, man, that's pretty much it for the offense. I mean, it's really not much else to say. The offensive line, man, I don't even really care about talking about people individually because overall, it just seemed like everybody had bad moments. Nobody was great. Nobody was perfect. Run blocking wise, they were, pretty good, but pass protection wise, they were terrible until like literally both of the drives where our offense moved the ball the best was when our offensive line pass protected the best. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. Now, moving to the defense, Jack Del Rio, y'all, I can't really be mad at y'all. It's really like, again, when you only allow a team in the NFL to score 13 offensive points throughout an entire game, your defense did their job. The Cowboys just lost with like 30-something points earlier today. Your defense did their job when you lose only allowing 13 points by the opposing team's offense. It's not the defense's fault. Now, granted, that one drive was terrible, but like the point I made in my stream, the fact that they even went for that 4th and 9 was crazy. Honestly, most situations, more times than not, the team just punts there and the defense doesn't give up that touchdown. Granted, of course, they still deserve all of the blame in the world for allowing that touchdown drive to happen. But in a normal world, in a regular average game, the opposing offense doesn't even go for 4th and 9 right there, and they punt the ball, and our defense doesn't allow a touchdown at all in the game. And they only allow 6 points in the entire game. So, man, I just, there's no way to blame them. Now, Daron Payne, I'm on you. Because where were you today? This was your worst game of the season by far, I feel like, because I don't even remember him existing. I was calling for him every quarter. I'm like, Daron Payne, this is the worst day to have your worst day. Where were you at, man? We needed you some of that time, even though, again, overall, the defense did enough to win. More than enough to win this game. This is completely on the offense and the refs. But still, at the end of the day, Daron Payne, it would have been nice if you could have showed out, because maybe that would have been enough of the difference for us to win that game. And maybe enough of the difference to where they don't convert that 4th and 9. Maybe you get a sack there. Again, they only score 6 offensive points, 13 overall points with the strip sack for a touchdown, and we potentially go down to win the game with a game-winning field goal right there at the end. Who knows? Jonathan Allen as well. Out of all of the defensive linemen, I feel like Jonathan Allen made the most plays, but it wasn't like a Pro Bowl game from him. He had like one really good pressure and a few run stops, and he was the best out of our defensive line, and he still wasn't very impressive, especially with all of the injuries that the Giants offensive line had coming into this game. Montez Sweat made a couple of plays, not as many as Jonathan Allen, so still just as disappointing. But Daron Payne, man, where were you today? And then moving on to the linebackers, Jamin Davis did everything he could. He wasn't perfect today, but he was big time. We allow more points if Jamin Davis doesn't play how he played today, man. You saw John Bostic getting cooked. Every time they got an opportunity to match up Saquon Barkley or any receiver against them, it was food every time. And Jack Del Rio still found a way to scheme with John Bostic being as much of a liability as he is, and as much as us fans hate him, you got to remember that Jack Del Rio still found a way with John Bostic having to play, because it's literally Jamin Davis, John Bostic, and David Mayo. And are you just going to play Jamin Davis as the only linebacker on the field all day? You can't. So John Bostic has to play. And Jack Del Rio found a way to only allow 13 offensive points with John Bostic being on the field that much. I think Jack Del Rio deserves a round of applause for that alone. But yeah, John Bostic's terrible. David Mayo isn't any better. We definitely got to go linebacker heavy in the draft and or free agency. First 2 rounds of draft, spend a lot of that money that you're going to gain back from releasing Carson Wentz, that $28 million. Pay Daron Payne, even though after this game makes me question it a little bit. But based on every other game this season, we still should pay Daron Payne, even after a terrible game like today where he completely disappeared. It was the worst day to have your worst day. And then also use the rest of that money to go get a premier linebacker, because this free agency class has some talent in it. You could probably get, shouts out to my boy Washington Command Center pointing out the fact that you could probably get Devin Bush for very cheap. And Devin Bush hasn't been really good since he's been drafted like that, but he can't be worse than John Bostic or David Mayo. So, and then going to the secondary, I felt like overall they played pretty well. Danny Johnson had a fantastic first drive with 2 pass deflections, and overall I felt like he had a good game. Kendall Fuller, I don't even remember him being on the team today, which is a good thing. When you don't remember a corner exists, that means he was locking somebody up. So he had a good game. Bobby McCain, like I said, a lot of those guys were right there. They were one step away from interceptions. Daniel Jones's arm strength he was able to fit it into crazy tight windows. He was confident today. I respect Daniel Jones for what he did today, getting blasted on some of his throws, like the Kirk Cousins game we had against the Vikings, knowing that he's gonna get obliterated right through the chest, sees the defensive lineman coming and still delivering strikes and first down. So I respect Daniel Jones for today. I mean, we've already seen enough that we should respect Daniel Jones because he looks like Pat Mahomes against us for some reason. But man, the secondary, like I said, I can't be too mad at them. Derek Forrest had a couple of nice plays. Cameron Curl made a lot of really good tackles for us. Really good tackles, had some good coverage as well at times. It's just, they were there a lot of the time. It wasn't even like we had miscommunication. We only had like 1 or 2 plays where a receiver was actually like open. The rest of it was Daniel Jones throwing a perfect dot through a tight window where Bobby McCain a step sooner is an interception. You know, it's just like, so I can't even be too mad at the secondary today because literally, like I said earlier, the NFL is literally set up. The rules, everything is set up for the offense to beat the defense. You can play great defense. You can have great coverage. In the offense, if they're great as well, they're going to win 9 times out of 10, which takes me back to the point that there's no excuse for the offense because the NFL is designed in 2022 literally for the offense to score more than 12 points a game. That's inexcusable. So just going back to the defense, the secondary, I'm not too mad at y'all. Again, it's really hard to be mad at anybody on defense, even John Bostic and Deron Payne, because when you only allow 13 offensive points, you're supposed to win, especially at home. But the refs, the offensive line, and Taylor Heinicke had other plans, I guess. And then moving on to special teams, Joey Sly, you got to be more consistent. You left points on the field, which takes me back to Ron Rivera. Now, granted, they say it's because of the win, but that field goal we didn't attempt in the first quarter kind of came back to hurt us a little bit. But again, I mean, Joey Sly, all he technically missed was an extra point, which kind of hurt us. I mean, it didn't get a chance to hurt us, but it almost did. And then he was 2 for 2 of field goals with a long 51, so that's not bad. It feels like he was worse than that, but I guess it was just terrible situations when he missed that PAT and stuff. Again, I can't be too mad at Ron Rivera for that, not going for the field goal in the first quarter because of the wind. He was kicking against the wind, but I still hate it because then when we punted it, they returned it to almost pretty much where we hiked the ball to where we could have kicked the field goal. They almost returned it. If we would have missed the field goal, the Giants would have pretty much started with the ball where they ended up starting with the ball anyway after the punt. It was only like a 2-yard difference, if that. So that kind of sucked, but that's not really his fault. Dax Milne, I mean, at least he technically doesn't muff punts, but like we need a little bit more out of the return game. And if you're about to fair catch it within the 8-yard line, just let it go behind you. Now, one time where he fielded it within the 8-yard line late in the game, there was a Giants defender already behind him. They would have fielded it at the 1. So I'm not mad at him for that one. But overall, I just wish we had more explosion in the punt return game. But at least we have explosion in the kickoff return game. 3 returns for 93 yards, an average of a long of 43 for Antonio Gibson. That's pretty good. I can't wait for him to break one loose. And then Tress Way is a god. Tress Way is just different. 2 punts inside the 20, long of 65. He's a god. Tress Way, I mean, it's sad to say. We keep saying it, and it's kind of funny as a joke, but at the same time, it's kind of sad. But Tress Way is one of our best players. Pro Football Focus is tripping for saying he's like the 26th best punter in the NFL according to his grade. That's ridiculous. Tress Way is easily one of the, at the very least, 5 best punters in the NFL, and you saw it today. He bailed us out of a lot of situations. But then, granted, it was kind of funny because the second time he punted it within the Giants 3-yard line, I was nervous because the first time he did it was the only drive that the Giants looked like they had any sort of offense. That was the only good offensive drive for them when Tress Way punted it on like their 2-yard line. I thought we should have got a safety. I felt like Jack Del Rio, one thing I can blame him for, I feel like in those situations, just be aggressive, blitz if you got to, and try to get the safety. Stop playing soft coverage, stop playing soft defense, nervous, safe defense. When the opposing offense is on the 2-yard line, you blitz and send everything at them. You run zero coverage, I don't care. If they get a big play, whatever. Because at the end of the day, they ended up scoring a 97-yard touchdown drive anyway. I would have preferred to at least try to get the safety. So that's one thing I can fault Jack Del Rio for, but everything else, he was pretty great. But yeah, man, I was nervous with that second Tress Way punt because it was a great punt. Historically great punt, one of the best punts I've seen from a punter all season, but it gave me flashbacks. Last time the Giants started within their own 3-yard line, they went on a 97-yard touchdown drive, so I was a little worried, but the defense handled their business there. So, you know, that's just something funny to think about. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Get in the comment section, let me know how you felt about everything I discussed in this video. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know who you feel like is the most to blame. Give your top 5 list. Like I said, it's hard for me to put it in any order. I kind of want to put the refs number 1, but either way, my top 3 are easily, and it's neck and neck, offensive line, pass protection wise, Taylor Heinicke and the refs. I feel like Scott Turner's a distant 4th, and I feel like, you know, a mix between Daron Payne and John Bostic. Daron Payne not showing up and John Bostic being a mismatch no matter where he is. Being food for the opposing offense no matter where he is. I feel like that also contributed. And I also feel like Jahan Dotson, great game as a receiver, but as a blocker, man, that could have literally have won the game if you at least just gotten Kayvon Thibodeau's way. I'm not blaming him. He's not even in my top 5, but I'm just trying to think of everything. Joey Slye missing the extra point. It was just a lot of things that went wrong. Scott Turner, if he was just a more consistent play caller. But my top 3 are easily Taylor Heinicke, offensive line, and the refs. Easily. I mean, I may wake up tomorrow and it may be a different order out of that top 3, but no matter what, even after I watch film, I feel like that's going to be a certified concrete top 3, and then we can debate everything else after that. But yeah, man, definitely support the channel. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. I appreciate all of my supporters. Shouts out to all of y'all that pulled up to the stream. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.